What is going on, Panthers Nation? Carolina Dad here. Can you hear that? Can you hear the drum beating, the keep pounding drum? Football is back in the Carolinas. Not training camp, not a joint practice, not fan fest, not back together, mini camp. We are here. Real football to be played at Bank of America Stadium coming up this Saturday against the New York Jets. What is going on, folks? Carolina Dad here, host of the Two Growls, One Roar podcast. And we have had a busy week. You as a fan have had a busy week. The players have had a busy week trying to stay in tune with all the events that are happening. Jets coming in, national media, hard knocks. Practice gets rains out today and training camp's over. Yes, I'm recording this Thursday night at 10 o'clock. Per usual, folks. You know how we roll. All right, well, all that aside, let's get up to speed with everything that's happened. So today's episode is primarily a Jets Panthers preview, or at least that was the initial thought. And then all this news happens. Even from the last episode that I recorded, 2 or 3 days ago, all this other news has come out. We've got a new depth chart, or our first initial depth chart, where, I'm going to overreact. That's why I have a show for the Panthers, so I can overreact and give you my thoughts. We have Camp Confidential that was released, Hard Knocks, QB1. This came out of nowhere. If you have not followed this, Tubi, look it up, Tubi. So Yahoo Sports reported that Tubi was going to release QB1, and there was this season that had not been released that features Bryce Young and Anthony Richardson. Like, are you kidding me? This is just pure gold in this off season. Well, preseason now. So anyways, that's available. I watched the first episode with Nolan tonight. Quickly talk about that. We'll talk about, like I said, the injury updates, IR, and then actually give you a teaser preview of the Jets Panthers game. This will be my first breakdown. It's going to be very short and simple because it's a preseason game. Who knows what really is going to happen in this game? Like who's going to be playing here versus there. But I do have a few things that I would like to key in on. So we'll talk about that. No better way, though, than to start this session or this episode talking about the joint practice with the New York Jets. It was New York as New York could get, with New York coming to Spartanburg, South Carolina. I don't know if Spartanburg, South Carolina has had that much media attention ever in their entire existence. I don't think so. Seeing the lines of people, how crowded the practice was. So if you recall in my previous episode, I talked about the attendance at Back Together, 15,000 people, but that's a stadium. It's a stadium that's meant to hold that many people. There were 10,000 tickets. I don't know if there was that many people, but it looked like it at the joint practice this week. The sheer volume, I don't even know how to put that into words. We did have Jets fans there, Panthers fans. I think even today, if the event or the practice had gone on, there's going to be another 10,000 people. The Panthers, they've got the buzz. And let's talk about the headlines that came out of the joint practice. Hey, some tempers flared. We talked about, or Frank Wright talked about, setting the tone and also ensuring, that an actual fight was not going to break out, or if a fight did break out, that it was maintained. And that's what we heard. There were a few instances, there's some tweets firing off that, a fight was about to happen, or Hayden Hurst, I saw, got a little fired up maybe. But overall, everything you would expect. I mean, two teams that really haven't played each other, or two teams that have been in training camp with each other this whole time, getting their first opportunity with another team. And I should say the Jets have faced the Browns, so maybe a little different there, but first time for the Panthers. So tempers flaring, everybody wants to kind of show off a little bit more. You got the Hard Knocks cameras there. Everybody's going to take it up a notch. Panthers want to show off. Hey, I would. And that's what Brian Burns did. He put on a show. Panthers were posting all the highlight reels as the day went on of just him and his domination. And then we have Mike Greenberg, very big New York Jets fan. If you don't follow ESPN, he's a big Jets fan. Mike Greenberg runs Get Up, has his own talk show, all that. And I saw a clip of his reaction to the joint practice, just getting fired up that our defensive line dominated their offensive line. And that was a conversation around the New York Jets. I know this is not a New York Jets podcast, but that was one of the big question marks on that side of the ball. So to know that our defensive line, which it should, was able to dominate, hey, that sets the tone. And if you think about, like, what do you really get out of these joint practices? There's all kind of buzz. There's always going to be buzz that comes out of it. Every fan base, each side of the fan base is going to have their own views. But listening to just a few Panthers fans and Jet fans coming out of this thing, I think people realize that this is a totally different Panthers team than in years past. We know it is. We've been following them. I've been reporting on them, giving you my scoops and takes. And yeah, we know this is a different team, a well-coached team, a team with just a new style of leadership in the locker room and at the coaching level. And that's transpired. The energy that they brought, they talked about wanting to set the tone in the practice, not looking like a fool when Hard Knocks is rolling in. You have the New York Jets rolling in, and that's exactly what they did. They set that tone. We did get to see some cool moments, or a cool moment, at least the video. We don't know what the exchange was with Aaron Rodgers and Bryce Young. I won't say passing the torch because Bryce has a lot to prove. Long ways to go from Aaron Rodgers. But seeing that interaction, I think the fan bases love that. Even hearing in Aaron Rodgers' press conference after the practices saying that Carolina's in good hands. And if you didn't know, they share an agent. So he said, hey, yeah, I've heard about this Bryce Young for quite a while. And he has known that he's, the real deal. It is great. It's great to have a future Hall of Famer. Yes, Aaron Rodgers is a future Hall of Famer saying that about your quarterback. And it gives you that confidence that the things we have in place here are good. And as we talk about the things we have in place here, as I'm recording this, we had the Houston Texans debuting CJ Stroud. Part of this fan base and me for maybe 2 or 3 episodes was debating on CJ Stroud. If CJ Stroud was going to be our choice at quarterback. And I went back and forth. Everyone knows I ended up, deciding on Bryce Young as the dude that was going to lead us. And that's who we were going to draft. But I say all that because you see CJ Stroud out there tonight in the game and his offensive line just falling apart, them getting after Stroud. I say all that because number one, you're thankful for the way that Scott Fitterer has built our offensive line. When we talk about our depth in the depth chart, that's one of the things that we likely won't have to worry about. We're going to have too many offensive linemen, and it goes back to Campman and what he's built. Aaron Rodgers even talked about guys wanting to play for Campman and what he brings. And if you didn't know, they have a little history together all the way back at the Green Bay days. But here's the second takeaway. I know that Bryce Young is going to be playing in the preseason game. I do not want to see him have I'll call it silly injury by going out there. I know that Frank Wright and the team wants to have him get his reps, which I do too. But at the same time, it's the preseason. Put him out there for a series or two and call it a day. We don't need someone getting injured in the preseason like we saw last year with Matt Corral. Now, before I end up talking about this joint practice for the next 10, 15 minutes, because I'm already 9 minutes in rambling about joint practice, I am going to try and close it down. Closing out the whole training camp experience, at least summarizing, number one, the health of the team, as well as just a few small takeaways from the last part of practice. So when practice was closed out, or the last joint practice with the New York Jets, they did the 2-minute drill or 2-minute drive. The Panthers defense shut out Aaron Rodgers, so they went 3 and out. Then Bryce Young went down on his drive, and we ended up getting a field goal. On the next opportunity, Zach Wilson came in, and we intercepted Zach Wilson, and then Andy Dalton ended up driving down, and we ended up missing the field goal. So overall, no better way to close out camp. And there's going to be people that are like, oh, the Panthers are going to be really good this year. And then you're going to have the Jets fans like we've already seen. They're like, oh, the Jets are so terrible. Come on, man. Put this thing into context, folks. It's a joint practice in Spartanburg, South Carolina. They're not really showing all their apples. We had Luvu out, LaVisca out. I'm sure the Jets had a few of their guys sitting. So no, let's take it back a notch. The other kind of stat or takeaway that we have is it's funny. It was Mike K or Joe Pearson of The Athletic that tweeted out Bryce Young's stats throughout the entire camp. Like, that's insanely impressive for someone to track his stats of throws in 11 on 11. But the biggest thing we got was that there were about 2 batted balls across the entire camp. No concerns about his height. There you go. And I remember last year coming down when we were watching Baker, I think he probably had 2 batted balls per 11 on 11 session. And yeah, there you go. The other thing, and I promise this is my last update about training camp. I tweeted out earlier and I was like, does anyone in this fan base know the difference this year versus last year with practice or 11 on 11 being right there in front of you versus, how it was last year and the ability to take cameras and pictures and photos? And what I got was it sounded like that was a Matt Rule thing. So there you go. That was the difference in this year and last year, right? It's like, don't care. Go ahead and leak out everything. Show the world how good our team is going to be. Now, when I talked about the 11 on 11 drives, I didn't tell you who was the kicker because it was not Eddie Pinheiro. The Panthers, and if you follow this, signed kicker Matthew Wright. Now, this is a temporary signing primarily for the preseason. Eddie Pinheiro has tweaked something. There are not concerns that he's going to miss time in the season. So Matt Wright's been brought in to help out. So he was 1 for 2 in his field goal opportunities. And I think the second one that he missed was pretty lengthy, like a 50-yarder wide right when I was following through with the tweets. So that's your injury update number 1. So don't be too concerned, or at least don't get concerned right now. But kicking health, which we've seen to just get up and down here in the Carolinas, hopefully he's going to be good heading into the season. Now, the other injury does impact the roster and positions. It opens up things for some guys. And we saw this last year. We saw it when Sam Darnold got hurt, where PJ Walker was likely going to be cut, and then he ends up being able to remain on the team. So Damiere Byrd, unfortunately, has a pretty significant injury, according to Reich. Timetable or status for a return, 6 to 8 weeks. And this was, reported yesterday coming out of the press conference there. So that does play an impact because he was one of the borderline players on the roster. So at this point, you start talking about IR and the IR rules. So there's no limit to the number of players that can go on IR. So we could put 20 players on IR if they truly were or needed to go on injured reserve. Where it gets tricky is bringing those players back as we get into the season. And if you recall, we're already going to have one person on the IR that's going to be returning, which is Austin Corbett. If Damiere Byrd goes on IR and he is planned to return, he would be our second person to return. And you say, well, why does that matter? The NFL has rules in place on the number of times a team can lift someone from IR onto the live roster. And so you have 8 times. 8 times as a team the entire season. So one player can be lifted up twice or moved up twice, maximum. After that, they're done for the season. And I say all that because as the Panthers organization, depending on the significance of this injury, do the Panthers want to go into the season with 2 guys on IR that are going to make a return? We know Corbett's coming back. We know Byrd likely should be making a return. Then you only have 6 spots left, or 6 opportunities to bring someone back into IR if they got hurt during the season and could be available later. It gets tricky. So it's It's one of those things that as we look at the roster and the roster breakdown and the cuts that are going to happen, Bird was a guy that I thought would be competing. It feels like Shi Smith is now going to be secure or safe, and we carry 6 wide receivers. I don't know if we keep Bird, put him on IR, and or move it or look at the practice squad, but that will be a storyline that continues to develop as we move through this preseason. And the other big significant change that I talked about is the way roster cuts work this year. Originally, in years past, you had multiple roster cuts, going from 90 to whatever. And now we've moved into this one cut D-Day where everyone gets cut down to the 53-man roster with your 16 practice players. But when you think about this, when all these flurry of things happen, other teams are doing the same things. You have 31 other NFL teams cutting, and I don't have a calculator in front of me, and I'm not a math guy. So trying to do this pretty ad hoc right now, and you can tell my brain's not working. 37 players on each team. So we're looking at almost 1,100 guys getting cut on the same day. And the significance of that, like I said, you'll have 16 on each team that make the practice squad, but teams are going to be looking around to see who cut who. And it becomes a chess game trying to decide how you want to move forward, because you're going to have, and I think in the Panthers situation, a few guys that are not borderline, but NFL players that should be on our roster that we're not going to have a spot for. We're just not. There's not enough. I went through my initial depth chart breakdown the other day. We'll look at it here again in a second. There's just not a lot of opportunity. When you think about the NFL in the preseason, and I tweeted about this, the NFL preseason is the most unique, I feel like, out of any of the major sports. It has the most significance. So you look at Major League Baseball. Major League Baseball, you have spring training. Guess what? If you don't make it onto the show, the Major League Baseball roster, you're going to go into not training camp. You're going to go down into the minors, AAA, AA, single A. There's an opportunity for you. You think about the NBA. NBA is a smaller size pool, but you've got NBA guys trying out. If they don't make the roster, there's potential for the G League. We know a lot of guys like to go overseas. And I know on an NBA roster, there's fewer spots. You're talking 12, 15 guys that you're trying to compete to get on the team versus, NFL size much larger. But the NFL is unique because the NFL at this point in time does not have a fallback for these NFL players. And so it begs the question, at what point, and I tweeted this too, at what point is the NFL going to update the roster size? The roster size hasn't been updated in 53 years. I'm talking about the number of players in 13 years for the 53-man roster. There were recent changes to increase the practice squad. There were additional temporary changes when COVID was around, and I think it increased the roster size by 2 players. But the NFL has the money, and you're talking about the guys that are towards the end of the roster, salaries on the low end of $750,000 to $1.5 million per year. Maybe not even fully guaranteed. So it's not like they cannot afford the room and to expand this, but it's going to have to flow through the NFL Players Association for something like this to happen, for, momentum to move. But this is my theory, and I've got 2 thoughts on it. So we don't have a true development league. Well, people will say, well, college football is a development league. And yeah, it in all honesty, it is. Like, that is your development league. But there's nowhere for you to really fall down into except the XFL, the USFL, or the CFL. XFL, USFL, or the newer spring leagues that are out there. Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, even doing some partnerships with the NFL. The issue with that, though, if you think about this model, so the guys get cut, they don't make the practice squad, they move over to that. They have to wait. You're talking waiting 8 or 9 months for the spring league to roll around for them to play in, because they don't get to play until the NFL season is over. It's a great opportunity. but it's not a true development league. And this is just me throwing this out there. I envision at some point in time, the NFL, either something's going to happen with college sports. We see the conference realignment, the mega conferences that are being built. At some point, these mega conferences are just going to break away from the NCAA, create their own governing body, even if it's just for football, baseball, I don't know. And I think when you build this out, it opens up a whole other opportunity. Now, the thing is, like, if a guy tries to go to the NFL, he has played 2 or 3, well, technically you have to play 3 years. So plays 3 years in college, doesn't get drafted, doesn't make the practice squad. It's not like he can easily come back in and go to college. So it becomes a model of sorts where is the college the sponsor of the team, and these guys are, you no longer are going to school. Maybe there's a route that if you want to get an education, you can. I don't know. I'm just totally throwing all of this stuff out there. But my other thought is, if the XFL continues to be successful, define success, just being able to run, eventually they want to turn a profit. Think about what could happen if the NFL absorbed the XFL. So keep the league, but keep it coinciding with the NFL season. That way you kind of have this minor league system. Now I know there's only 8 XFL teams. We're going to need 32. That's something to sort through. But potentially you get into some smaller markets that don't have a team yet, and they've got this XFL minor league team that feeds into the NFL. But underneath that, you're able to absorb these 500, 600, 1,000, whatever it is, players that are not on an NFL roster to help them develop and give your team more flexibility. Think about the minor league system in baseball. That thing is like just a gold mine of trying to get talent, develop it. I know with baseball, it can take years to get things right. And football is a little different, which, it's a contact sport. People's careers are much shorter. But that's my opinion and thoughts on the preseason. So totally random tangent. So I say all that because the preseason, I heard someone say, like, why does everyone care about the preseason so much? And the primary reason that fans care about the preseason is it's our opportunity to see these guys that are on the borderline competing to make a team. This is their chance. They get 3 games. Really, it could be 2 games, 2.5 games. How much time do you actually get on the field? But trying to make the roster. So there you go. Totally random tangent for you today. Let me get you back on track. Now, before I move into the Jets Panthers preview, we talked about the preseason. Have you had a chance to watch Hard Knocks? Again, I know it's featuring the New York Jets, but if you haven't, go out to HBO Max, or Max as they call it. Catch up on Hard Knocks. It was a really good episode. Seeing Aaron Rodgers, his interaction with Zach Wilson. People have opinions on Rodgers, just, the way he's done in the media, the way he's gone about getting to where he is. Darkness retreats, whatever it is. There's a lot of humility that you see in the HBO series with him mentoring Zach Wilson, and just seeing the ins and outs of who he is as a person. So I think it kind of sheds a good light for him, which is great. And of course, you get to see all the other players there. But I say watch it because we know that next week the next episode should likely feature the joint practice with Carolina Panthers. So hey, go ahead and get up to speed so you know how it's going, and then turn it on and get to watch a little bit of inside, or I guess I shouldn't say inside knowledge, but get to watch some nice HBO Hard Knocks with Carolina Panthers semi-featured. And as we talk about Hard Knocks, and I teased this too way back when I said, talking about would the Panthers be on Hard Knocks this year? Like, no, they're not. But we have Camp Confidential that just dropped. And in the words of Frank Wright, I'm going to keep it 100. If you have not had a chance to watch that, I highly recommend that as well. The Panthers, I guess, media team has done this a few years. And so this year it's your Camp Confidential, really recapping the process of players moving in, interviews, ins and outs, and meetings. We did not get to see the talent show. I thought for sure we get to see Bryce Young up there singing. We didn't. But you do get to see a little more of how this is being built, how Frank's running the team, and what it looks like from his perspective. So go check that out. It's just Camp Confidential on YouTube under the Carolina Panthers. And then today, last little media content before we look at the depth chart and then Jets Panthers previews. And here I am rambling. Let me move this one. So QB1, if you've not heard of the QB1 series, primarily I believe Nolan actually introduced it to me on Netflix. It follows high-class quarterbacks or high-profile quarterbacks in their senior years of high school before they go on to college. I know Spencer Rattler's been featured, a few other guys. Well, apparently there was a QB1 for Bryce Young, Anthony Richardson, and a quarterback deuce that's at Kentucky right now. I got to watch the first episode tonight, and it's everything you would have expected. Like Bryce Young's entire life in football is going to be a movie or could be a movie. And you just see that. One with his parents making a choice to move him to a different school. You see the program and the expectations that of where he is at the high school he's playing for a high school that's won national championships. You know, that pressure is sitting on Bryce as he leads the team, and their coach ain't no joke. You know, I can see why Bryce ended up going with Nick Saban. It kind of gave me that Nick Saban vibe. If, you know, you ever got to see Nick Saban coaching the way he is. But go watch that. I'm going to finish it hopefully in the next few days, or who knows with the baby, but we'll get that series wrapped up. I'll keep you updated on anything else I get out of it. But you also get to see Anthony Richardson and the differences in their upbringing, like where they were raised. And you look at the practice facility and practice and the location of Bryce Young and the camp that he's going to, and he's got Trevor Lawrence. I can't even remember the other guys that are there with him in the quarterback camp, but a bunch of high-profile guys in Los Angeles playing on pristine turf fields in California, and you flip over to Gainesville, Florida with Anthony Richardson and seeing, you know, almost like a dirt, clay, a little bit of grass football field and just not the nicest gear. And so just to see the trajectory of their stories and how they got to where they are, high-profile quarterbacks in the NFL, it was cool because you got to hear Anthony Richardson say that like his dream and goal was always to play in the NFL. So being able to see, I mean, I feel like all these series, you know, they could just at least make a killing for the rest of their life, making all these things, even if I'm their only consumer, because I'll eat up all this football content. So go check that out. And you can find it on Tubi. It's free. So just search QB1 Bryce Young, and I'm sure you'll be able to find the instructions. Okay, depth chart. It's time to talk about the depth chart. Time to overreact. Time for me to overreact looking at the depth chart. So let me get this pulled up here. And so I'm just trying to find... you can hear me clicking through. All right. So I was trying to pull this up so I can compare my list with the list that was published by the Panthers and see, you know, how far off I was, and talk about the surprises. So jumping in, and I'm going to do it by position group this time, so make it a little more easier to digest. We'll look at our 3 starting receivers right now based off of position. DJ Chark, no surprises. Adam Thielen, and guess what, folks? Jonathan Mingo is listed as your receiver, as your 3rd starting receiver right now. Now, it all has to do with the position that they're playing, because behind Mingo is Laviska Shenault. We know he's going to be moved around. Behind Adam Thielen is Damiere Byrd. Damiere Byrd's out, so that moves up Shi Smith. And then Terrace Marshall, who I've talked about on and off, is sitting behind DJ Chark right now. Now, Terrace Marshall had a monster day yesterday. All the reports that came out, the video footage, is that he was making acrobatic catches, making it look easy, running over guys. So his stock is, I feel like where he sits is just based off of the position and where he plays. There is opportunity between now and the start of the season for him to make a move and move on up. But for now, that is your wide receiver core. So if I'm making my prediction just off of what the Panthers shared, we have Shenault, Mingo, Thielen, Smith, Terrace Marshall, and DJ Chark. So that leaves Javon Wims, Josh Van, CJ Saunders, Derek Wright, and Gary Jennings sitting on the outside. Let's move to offensive line. There were no surprises on the starting offensive line. So Ike Ekwonu, left tackle, left guard, Brady Christensen, center Bradley Bozeman, Cade Mays at right guard with Austin Corbett out, and then Taylor Moton right tackle. Where we did see a few surprises is the backup left tackle position. So Michael Jordan, and I had Michael Jordan on the hot seat or someone that was going to potentially be cut. Still an option, but not based off kind of at least what we're seeing right now. Nash Jensen coming in, again, undrafted free agent that I told you about, coming in at left guard. Center, they have the backup is Justin McCray. Right guard, Deontay Brown is another guy that I had lower on my list. So they have him as the right guard backup. And then right tackle, Cameron Irving, who was not listed. And the third string is Chandler Zavala. And we know Chandler Zavala is coming off the PUP list. He's just now getting back in the swing of things. So there is a chance that I think Jordan or Irving could potentially be on the hot seat, or I still think they are. Just based off of the fact we're not going to carry 11 offensive linemen. I think our list is going to be 9 or 10. Then we'll look for potentially Irving or Jordan to be on the practice squad. Who else was not mentioned? Arnell Coleman, J.D. Renzo, Sam Tecklenburg, and Rick Lee. So those are the other offensive linemen that are probably going to be cut. When we look at the tight end position, Hayden Hurst is your starter with Ian Thomas as the second tight end, and then Tommy Trimble behind Hurst and then Stephen Sullivan as the second. Sullivan's someone that I haven't really mentioned, but he's competing for that tight end position, as we talk about the battles that are coming up, Cade Mays, according to some reports, did not have a great practice yesterday with the Jets and got benched. I still anticipate him being the starter, but things could shift in motion. So that's one thing to watch is the right guard, the battle for right guard. The other battle is the second tight end. I still believe that Tommy Trimble is going to make the leap. That was my whole talk track in the offseason, so that's where I'm putting my money. So we'll see that battle out. And then behind him, just Giovanni Ricci was the other one. Quarterback, there's no question marks here. Bryce Young, Andy Dalton, Matt Corral, and Jake Luton. What is the situation we'll talk about is, are we going to keep 3 quarterbacks? Are we going to keep Matt Corral on the roster? We know Jake Luton's likely practice team quarterback if he hangs around. Running back, no surprises there either. We have Saunders, Chuba Hubbard, and Blackshear. Those 3 are safe. Spencer Brown, he's looked good in spurts. See, I know he's going to want to fight for his spot in the preseason and try to show us something. He can play. He's seen some playing time, but I don't know if we'll have the room to keep him. So he may be practice squad. And then Cameron Peoples, App State guy again. We haven't seen him a lot in the training camp. He's been injured a little bit. He is one that likely is going to be on the practice squad, but I hope we get to see a little bit more of him in the preseason. And I talk about Miles Sanders before I move to the defense. Miles Sanders did tweak something in his groin. Should be okay, but he's being held out or was being held out of practice. So another one of those situations of injuries that we're going to watch. And the primary reason practice was canceled today to avoid, unnecessary injuries. Also, we did find out they did do a walkthrough practice at Gibbs Stadium. So the Jets and Panthers, not together, but separately. All right, defense. Let's look at defense. Had a few misses here too. So Derek Brown, we know starter defensive end. Deshaun Williams is behind him. Marquand McCall, defensive tackle. Nick Thurman, who I had lower on my list, is the second team. Defensive end is Shai Tuttle. Henry Anderson is his backup. Then we get into the good old outside linebacker position in the debate. Brian Burns listed as starter. Yetur Gross-Matos is behind him. Then DJ Johnson. If we look at the opposite side, Justin Houston is your starter on paper today. What makes this unique is when this depth chart was released, Houston had not even practiced with the Panthers. Like day one, he comes out and he's already a starter. So that should just tell you what is going on there. And we heard, from Houston that this thing has been in the works for a while. That he'd been talking to Frank Wright, trying to get the money right. And nice thing for him is he misses OTAs, minicamp, training camp as a veteran, good, get to sit out. And then we can start talking about his production, which we've actually talked about a little bit. Marquise Haynes is listed as his backup. And we know or believe if he would have been healthy that things might have panned out for him. But they didn't, so we will be watching this outside linebacker position battle because I don't know that we keep 6 outside linebackers. So at some point, someone's going to have to go. Now, when we talk about Yetur Gross-Matos, YGM, he has been run at defensive end in some of our nickelback dime packages, which means he's lined up on the interior as a 3. So a little bit different look. So I think he's safe. DJ Johnson hasn't been called a lot, but he is safe as well, at least in my opinion, but who knows? We'll see. Kobe Jones is a name that's come up, and I mentioned he's moved up to the 3rd string on the depth chart. Barno has dropped to the 4th string, so he is on your list of guys to watch to be cut, which I wouldn't have anticipated initially. We've got our linebackers, Frankie Louvu, Shaq Thompson. Behind them, we have Deion Jones, who we brought over. I mean, the linebacking core, inside linebacker, outside linebacker core right now is going to be stacked. Deion Jones could be a starter elsewhere. Camus Grugier-Hill has looked insane. I think he's had 3 or 4 interceptions. So those 4 guys are locks. Chandler Wooten, Ace Ellie, Bumper Pool, and Brandon Smith likely looking or potentially getting cut. At cornerback, we have J.C. Horn, Dante Jackson starting, Keith Taylor, C.J. Henderson. So again, no surprises there. That's how I outlined it. Behind them, Herb Miller and Mark Milton, and then Mac McCain and Rajon Wright. I anticipate those 4 guys getting cut. I think 4 DBs or 4 cornerbacks is what we'll carry. Hoping that some of those guys move over to the practice squad. Then we have safety, Xavier Woods and Von Bell. And behind Xavier is Jamie Robinson. And then behind Bell is Eric Rowe. Sam Franklin, who we know is one of our key special teams players, is listed at 3rd string. So that's another guy. I think we retain him because of his versatility on defense, but also his ability to help us in the special teams game. He could just do a lot. And then Josh Thomas. Our nickelback position is what we have Jeremy Chin listed at, our nickel cornerback. And then behind him, Stanley Thomas Oliver and Greg Maben. So unique that we are calling Jeremy Chin out in his specific position, which is nickelback. So I anticipate seeing a lot of nickelback from us. Not Nickelback the band. So that's your first depth chart. And then we look at returns. We have Raheem Blackshear listed on kick returns and punt returns as the first teamer. Glaviska listed as a backup kick returner. Bird was listed as a backup punt returner. And then Shi Smith was the backup for both of those. So I see Shi Smith moving up and making the cut. No changes for Jansen, Hecker, or Eddie Pinheiro, although we have Matthew Wright, but we know that's temporary. Well, that's your summary. So I guess I didn't have too many overreactions. The roster looks better and better. And, we heard from Reich saying that he feels confident with what we have today. We can win with this roster, win a bunch of games. You look at the moves that we're making here. It is to win the NFC South. I think that's why you're bringing on these veterans. It's because you see an opening. We know that, the guys that we got on like 1-year rentals. We've got to get some stronger assets in the offseason to build around it. But as I said, my entire time covering and doing this is that you move to a 3-4 and you come, we were in a 4-3. It's going to take a few seasons to get the perfect fit for the guys that you want to play that. So there you go. All right, folks, closing out the episode this time with our Jets versus Panthers preview. And this is the first preview. It's going to be super light. I don't know how I'm going to do it in the season, but it made sense to go ahead and do it now. So let's take a look. We have the New York Jets traveling down to Charlotte. Well, I guess they're traveling up because they were in Spartanburg. So we've got a 4:00 kickoff. The game is on the NFL Network. You can also watch it on the NFL app or NFL Plus if you subscribe to that. Kickoff is at 4:00. Now, what we will likely see, number one, we're from a New York Jets perspective, we talk about what the Jets are going to be doing. Probably not going to be seeing Aaron Rodgers. I anticipate a lot of Zach Wilson getting a lot of reps, and then Tim Boyle from their side of the ball. I'm not going to give you predictions on, what that's going to look like, how many reps they're going to get. Like, we'll see, we'll see as we go in. Bruce Hall for the Jets is out, so we'll probably see Michael Carter, Israel Ambenkonda, and then Zonovan Knight will be getting the running back duties. They have a few position battles going on, one of them being at center and then at offensive tackle. So kind of your breakdown there. And they do kind of have a little bit of a running back battle as well. So we'll see. Talk about the Panthers, because that's what we're really here for. So we know Bryce Young is going to see his first live action for the Carolina Panthers in Bank of America Stadium against an NFL team. Frank Wright has not disclosed how much time, how many series, how many plays. If I were a betting man, I think it depends on the success of the series. So if we come out and go 3 and out, I would anticipate seeing him again. If we go out and Bryce drives, 7, 8, 9, 10 plays, I think that's enough and you get him out. So that's my prediction, is like 2 series at the most, depending on the success of the first series. Now, if we come out in the second series and it's another 3 and out, I don't know if Reich's like, oh, we need to try one more time, or if he's like content and let's move on. So we'll see. We know the other position battles happening across the board. Outside linebacker, guard position, is Cade Mays going to be the one to step up? Wide receiver, just between the guys trying to make the cut in the list there with Smith, Mingo, Chark, Thielen, that they're in a good spot. But Terrace Marshall. So those are your true takeaways. Like, there's really not too much to talk about when we go into a preseason game. There'll be a lot more coming out of the game, I feel like, just from, what we see. I don't know what to expect from Frank Wright. How many guys on the first team defense. Likely we're not going to see Sanders or Miles Sanders because of the weak hamstring. That does mean that we'll see more of Chuba Hubbard, Raheem, and Spencer Brown, potentially Peoples if he's available. We know when we talk about quarterbacks, Andy Dalton's not playing. So we're going to see a lot of Matt Corral, and that's been the plan the whole time. It's what we've talked about. Matt Corral is going to get his chance to showcase what he has and what's available. With Matt Corral, the only thing I ask for this team is that if we put Matt Corral out there, please give him protection at the line. Last year when he was in there and he got injured, like, I don't know what we had out there, 3rd or 4th string is what it felt like. And that's when he suffered his injury. I'm not saying that's the reason, but he was running for his life back there in the pocket. Like, give this guy at least a decent chance of decent line around him. Just let the guy be able to make a few plays. And underneath that, maybe you get to see a little bit of Saunders and Wright and some of these other guys that I've talked a little bit about that may not make the roster, practice squad guys, but have looked pretty good through camp. I mean, it's the chance you have one game, then you got two more to showcase it. And really going into that third game, I think coaches are already going to have a good idea of like who's going to make the cut and who's not. So getting as much film as you can as a player, if this opportunity doesn't pan out, or if it does, so that, you're able to make that. You're not really able to go in there at the coaches, meetings and make a push for why you should stay, but your film will speak for itself. So that's what you get. Man, all right, y'all, this is it. I anticipate this will be all for this week. That's 3 episodes in a week. Way too many for my normal go-to. We'll have another episode dropping Tuesday. We should be getting into a rhythm, a much better rhythm with this, because now, practices are going to be closed off primarily. So we'll get the, updates through press conferences. That'll be it. We turn around and we play at the Giants on the 18th, which I believe it's a Friday, and then against the Lions on the 25th to close it out. So that's the end. And I should say the Lions game is at home, but that'll be it. And then we turn our attention to September 10th at the Atlanta Falcons. So there you go. All right, y'all. This has been Carolina Dad. As usual, y'all have a good one. Thank you.